Ethan Caldwell was one of the most powerful businessmen in the world. At 40, he had built Caldwell Enterprises into a tech empire. Every day, he signed billion-dollar deals, growing his wealth. To him, failure wasn't an option. But that morning, a single letter changed everything. Ethan's personal assistant walked into his luxurious office, placing his coffee on the desk. But next to it was a strange envelope. "This arrived this morning, sir, but there's no sender information." Ethan frowned. Who would send him an anonymous letter? He tore it open and unfolded the paper. As he read the first line, his breath caught in his throat. "Ethan, this is your future self. I'm writing to you because you're about to make the most important decision of your life. If you choose wrong, you will lose everything." Ethan froze. This had to be a joke. But at the bottom of the page, there was something terrifyingly familiar. His own signature. And in that moment, the biggest mystery of his life had just begun. Ethan stared at the letter for a long time. The paper didn't look old. The ink had just dried. But the signature, it was undeniably his. How was this possible? Ethan immediately called his security team. "Find the courier who delivered this. Track where it came from." But an hour later, the report left him even more unsettled. The letter had no record. No courier service, no post office, no one had sent it. A chill ran down his spine. This wasn't a prank. But if it was real, who had sent it, and how? Ethan reread the letter carefully. "If you choose wrong, you will lose everything." What choice? He muttered. Then, it hit him. His company was on the verge of a massive investment. They were about to launch a groundbreaking AI-powered financial system. It was the biggest project Caldwell Enterprises had ever attempted, but his competitors had warned that it was risky. And now, this letter was telling him the same thing. Was this investment the wrong choice? Ethan needed answers. He immediately called David Harper, his CFO. "David, bring me the full risk report on this investment and tell me the worst-case scenarios." David hesitated. "Sir, you already approved this project. Are you second-guessing it?" Ethan paused for a moment. "I just want to double-check a few things." But deep down, he knew. The decision was no longer as clear as it used to be. Ethan flipped through the reports David had brought him, and what he found made his stomach drop. His competitors might have been right. The investment wasn't as secure as it seemed. If it failed, his company would take a massive financial hit. But if he canceled it, Caldwell Enterprises would lose credibility. It was a lose-lose situation. As Ethan hesitated, his employees started noticing. David approached him, voice low. "Sir, why are you suddenly questioning this project? Did you receive some insider information?" Ethan took a deep breath. Should he tell David about the letter? Number David would think he had lost his mind. "No," Ethan finally said. "I just want to make sure we're making the right decision." David studied him for a long moment. "You're hiding something," he said at last. And in that moment, Ethan realized something chilling. People in his own company were watching him. Some of them doubted his leadership. And worst of all, he had no idea who he could trust. But there was one question he still couldn't answer. Was the letter telling the truth? Before Ethan could decide whether to halt the investment, he needed to uncover the truth. So he started digging into every detail of the project. But the deeper he went, the more questions he found. And soon, he realized this investment was far more dangerous than he had imagined. As Ethan analyzed the financial reports, something stood out. There were irregular figures. Some funds had been quietly redirected, and the majority of that money was under the control of one person, David Harper, Ethan's trusted CFO. How is this possible? He thought. David had been by his side for years. But what if he had been betraying him all along? Was this what the letter had been warning him about? If he approved the investment, was he walking into a trap? Ethan decided to confront David, but as he approached his office, he heard David speaking quietly on the phone. "Ethan is getting suspicious, but I'll handle it. The investment will go through." Ethan froze. And in that moment, he understood the truth. David was using this project for his own gain. And if Ethan signed the deal, he could lose everything. David ended the call and looked up. "Ethan? What are you doing here?" Ethan narrowed his eyes. "Tell me the truth, David. Is this investment really safe?" David hesitated for just a second. Then, a calm smile spread across his face. "Ethan, in business, you have to take risks. But don't worry, everything is under control." But Ethan no longer trusted him, and deep inside, something told him. The letter was real. That night, Ethan sat alone in his office. On his desk, the investment papers lay next to the mysterious letter. If he canceled the investment, he would lose key investors. If he approved it, he might lose everything. This was the biggest decision of his life. And then, the final words of the letter echoed in his mind. "Right now, you are choosing your path, but remember, one wrong choice and you lose everything." Ethan took a deep breath. He reached for his pen. There was no turning back now. It was time to make his move. Ethan gripped the pen in his hand tightly. He had two choices: approve the investment and put his company at massive risk, cancel it and face furious investors. But one thing was clear: David had betrayed him, and this project was far more dangerous than he had imagined. Ethan slammed the pen onto his desk and stormed out of his office. He walked straight to the boardroom where the executives were gathered. As he entered, all eyes turned to him, David included. "Gentlemen," Ethan said, his voice firm, "this investment is canceled." The room fell silent. David's expression tightened. "Ethan, this is insane. You know this investment could make us billions." Ethan could feel the tension in the air, but he remained calm. "No, David, this investment would destroy us. And I also know you've been profiting from it personally." A stunned silence filled the room. David's eyes narrowed. "You can't prove that." Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a USB drive. "Actually, I can." He held it up. "I reviewed the documents, the hidden funds, the false reports. It's all here." David's face drained of color. The other executives started murmuring, exchanging glances. One thing was clear: Ethan was right. David shot up from his seat, furious. You set me up? I've been loyal to you for years." Ethan shook his head. "No, David. You've been betraying me for years. And from this moment on, we're done." Just then, the security guards entered the room. Ethan gave a silent nod. It was time for David to leave the company. For good. With David gone, Ethan felt a huge weight lifted off his shoulders. But the letter's mystery remained. Who had sent it? Had it really come from his future self? That night, Ethan sat alone in his office. He pulled out the letter once more and read it carefully. And then, something clicked. "Ethan, I am your future self." He examined the handwriting and realized something chilling. It was his handwriting. But there was a problem. He had never written this letter. So how was it possible? A strange thought crept into his mind. What if he was meant to write it in the future? What if one day something happened that made him send this letter back to himself? There was only one way to know. Ethan grabbed a blank sheet of paper and began to write. "Ethan, I am your future self. I am writing this letter because you are about to make the most important decision of your life." And just like that, he had started the loop. Ethan leaned back, exhaling. Somehow everything made sense now. Then, his phone rang, an unknown number. He hesitated, then picked up. A low voice whispered on the other end. "Ethan, you made the right choice, but this is only the beginning." Ethan froze, because he recognized the voice. It was his own. The loop had just begun.
If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and share. Subscribe for more inspiring stories.